Well, this is the sermon for the fifth Sunday in Lent, and it's Jeremiah chapter 31, verses 31 through 34. The time is coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. It will not be like the covenant I made with their forefathers, when I took them by the hand to lead them out of Egypt, because they broke my covenant, though I was a husband to them, declares the Lord. This is the covenant I will make with the house of Israel. After that time, declares the Lord, I will put my law in their minds and write it on their hearts. I will be their God, and they will be my people. No longer will a man teach his neighbor or a man his brother, saying, Know the Lord, because they will all know me, from the least of them to the greatest, declares the Lord. For I will forgive their wickedness and will remember their sins no more. The Word of God for the people of God. Today is a message called, How Do You Know Him? We were once traveling back home from Colorado, and we took a route through northeastern New Mexico. We discovered on our drive this place called Capulin Volcano National Monument. If you know Kim Wilkes, you know that science is one of her favorite subjects, so we had to absolutely stop and check this place out. As we were there buying our tickets from a young female ranger, I noticed a strong southern accent. I asked her where she was from, and she said she was from Kentucky. Well, she asked where we were from, and we said Cleveland, Georgia. And she said, I know some people from Cleveland, Georgia. She said that she had gone to college in Tennessee. As it turned out, the college was Tusculum College, and the two people that she knew were people we also knew. We had actually, as it turns out, found out that she lived in the exact same dorm as these two people. I always find it fascinating that you can find connection with others so easily, as if to kind of just ask a few questions and find out, how do you know him? Our passage today asserts that no longer will they say to one another, Know the Lord, because they will all know him. How have people in the past known the Lord? Well, Jeremiah 31 brings to the people of God a look back into the history and then a look forward into the future. Jeremiah 30 and 31 actually go together as a literary unit. It's called the Book of Comfort, or the Book of Consolation in Hebrew Scriptures. These chapters were written at a time either just before or during the Babylonian exile, one of the most tremendously terrible events in Jewish history. The first of the exiles might have occurred as early as 597 BC. King Jehoiakim of the southern kingdom of Judah was captured and exiled with his family, his court, and thousands of workers. The main deportation occurred following the destruction of Jerusalem, which included the temple in 586 BC. Jeremiah 29:10 states that the exile would last for 70 years. So Jeremiah looks back and reminds the people, and with verse 34, the Lord appeared to us in the past, saying, I have loved you with an everlasting love. By the way, that was verses 3 and 4, not 34. I have loved you with an everlasting love. I have drawn with unfailing kindness. In the future, I will build you up again. The days are coming, not declares the king, not declares the prophet, but declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant. But who talks covenant at a time like this? Well, the Lord does. A covenant is a special kind of relationship in which parties, individuals, pledge to each other. In the Old Testament, there were two parts to the covenant: a promissory oath and the stipulations or contents of what was promised. As we heard a few weeks ago in a sermon that I preached, there have been many covenants. Covenants had been established between God and Noah, God and Abraham, God and Isaac, God and Jacob, and then there was the covenant between God and Moses at Mount Sinai, which was for all the Hebrew people. In that covenant, the Lord took them by the hand and led them out of Egypt. God reminds them that He had been like a husband to them. Jeremiah 11:10 proclaims, "The house of Israel and the house of Judah have broken the covenant that I made with their ancestors." Yet, Hosea chapter 11 tells us, "When Israel was a child, I loved him, and out of Egypt. But the more they were called, the more they went away from me. I led them with cords of kindness, with ties of love. To them I was like one who lifts a little child to the cheek, and I bent down to feed them. How can I give up Ephraim? How can I hand over Israel? My heart is changed within me. All my compassion is aroused. I will not carry out my fierce anger, nor will I devastate Ephraim again. For I am God, and not a man, the Holy One among you. I will not come against their cities. They will follow the Lord. He will roar like a lion. And when he roars, his children will come trembling from the west. They will come from Egypt, trembling like sparrows, from Assyria, fluttering like doves. I will settle them in their homes, declares the Lord." So why, God, do you continue? Why, after all the covenant-breaking abuses, do you even care? They worshipped other gods with the most despicable practices. Yet in the end, God extends one more covenant. From the destruction that befell Israel at the hands of the Assyrians in 721 BC and Judah by the Babylonians in 586 BC, God will bring His people back. So what's different this time? Well, this time, the law will be within them, and He will write it on their hearts. Long before God had given His people a gift called the law, God had written the law on stone tablets Himself. That gift and the covenant that came with it was to build a community of faith, fairness, justice, and love. Instead, the people did just the opposite. They broke every law and failed to live as God's people. They failed to share it with their neighbors and practice goodness and kindness to the widow, to the orphan, or to the aliens living in their land. Their systems of justice and their economy were perverted. But this time, the people heard something new. It's not that the old was bad. It was their failure, not God's. The people this time, with heads down and tear-stained faces, heard a message from God in their minds and on their hearts. They could hear it and know it over all the wailing and sobbing because God was speaking directly to their hearts. And that's how we know Him. That's how we know Him. You see, this covenant is a new covenant. We know Him firsthand because He wipes the slate clean and forgets our sin. Our new covenant is with God through His Son, Jesus Christ, and He has written on our hearts the greatest love letter ever written. How well do you know Him? God's grace and forgiveness is a gift to your heart. I've always enjoyed spring, and winter is slowly giving way right now. Back during 2020, when teachers and students were sent home for the spring, I spent a great deal of time right here on this porch in a rocking chair right there, teaching my classes online with my computer in my lap. But as I looked out across the woods and the creek and the field beyond, I watched the earth change before my very eyes. It went from a pale green to a dark green. I watched the mountains just beyond my front porch move from a gray, black, slate color, and slowly it worked its way up the mountain, shades of green, all the way to the top. The transformation reminds me of what God does for us. God's grace is just that certain. Just as certain as spring is coming, God's grace is coming and is here. And God's grace comes for us, with us, through the person of Jesus Christ. And He knows us, and we know Him, because He is our God and we are His people. Now go today with these words of benediction. Now let the word of Christ rule in your hearts, since as members of one body you were called to peace. Well, I hope to see you here again next week for Palm Sunday here in the mountains.